Welcome to this e-learning course on how to prepare for reports, presentations and meetings with Japanese colleagues and customers. Japan is a process-oriented and risk-averse culture. Anyone who has worked with Japanese colleagues or customers will have noticed that how information is presented to them is as important as the information itself. So reports, presentations and meetings with them present a special set of challenges. In this session, we'll talk about how to communicate with Japanese colleagues and customers in a way that is easy to understand, how and why it is important to use visual aids in your presentations, tips on preparing reports for presentations, the so-called A3 method of presenting information, and how to avoid misunderstandings by confirming what has been decided. First, let's look at a real-life case study that illustrates one of the difficulties people run into when presenting information to Japanese colleagues. Annika is making a presentation to Mr. Akazawa, a director of her Japanese firm. She wants the firm to expand its sales operations in a particular region of Europe, and she's prepared a detailed written report to support her proposal, which she is explaining point by point. But Mr. Akazawa looks sceptical and bored. He flips through the pages of text in front of him, and before she is halfway through the presentation, he closes the report and appears to stop listening. Annika cannot see why he does not seem to grasp the importance of the points she wants to make. Annika has worked hard on her report, but handing Mr. Akazawa a booklet filled with too much text is not likely to be well received. For a Japanese person, having to wade through a sea of words to get to the point, particularly in a language that is not their native one, is daunting. When Japanese people receive long, wordy emails, they've even been known to stop reading halfway through and therefore miss key points that are embedded at the end. What would have worked better in this situation? Annika might have considered giving Mr. Akazawa a concise executive summary, bullet-pointed and graphically organised, together with a corresponding PowerPoint presentation. She should have presented her information as much as possible in the forms of graphs and charts rather than written text. Japan is a highly visual culture. The writing system of ideographic characters, called kanji, was originally brought from China in the 6th century and is based on a complex set of visual images. Reading and writing kanji is simultaneously a phonetic and visual act. Text and image have long been intertwined in traditional Japanese culture. Painters and poets seek to convey the most meaning in the fewest possible ink strokes or words. So reading images comes more naturally to Japanese people than slogging through lots of dense text. If you want to communicate effectively with a Japanese colleague or customer, use fewer words and present them in a highly structured way. Organize documents so that they can be perused quickly by dividing them into sections with headings. An executive summary also helps. The key is to be as concise as possible. Less is more, as the architect Mies van der Rohe famously said. Use an outline format or bullet points rather than long paragraphs, and underline key points so that they stand out. Use plain language and short sentences whenever possible. Be concrete in your presentation style. Whenever you can, add visual aids to convey information. If there are difficult terms in the material, include a glossary or definitions in parenthesis, and avoid using even common English acronyms unless you can define them. Finally, give specific examples to lend substance to your points, or use metaphors to illustrate them. Make sure your most important points are easy to identify. Visual aids help you to be concise and precise in conveying information to your colleagues. Here's an example of a table that tidily organizes statistics, and graphs that elegantly express data in the forms of lines and points and bars. Reference lines help the audience grasp your point more quickly. Pie charts also work well. Make sure your visuals are purely functional. They shouldn't look too fancy and should, above all, convey the information concisely and in a way that makes sense to the viewer. Whether you are making a presentation or submitting a report, keep in mind that because Japan is a risk-averse culture, only when Japanese people have the information they need do they feel comfortable going forward with a decision, and they will take as much time as needed to gather the necessary data before they do that. So if you want results sooner rather than later, don't just tell them, show them. In reports, they like to see far more background and contextual information than we may be used to providing. They want to have a holistic understanding of the context of a problem or situation before they make a decision about it. They want background information and supporting evidence, such as statistics, quotes, or copies of reports. They will probably have many questions about where you got your information and how you arrived at your point of view, and the more you can anticipate their questions in advance and bring along detailed answers, the more successful your presentation will be. You may also want to identify consistent themes or patterns in line with the company's mission statement or values, for example, and organise your information in a way that your listeners will recognise as resonating with the overarching goals of the organisation. One method that Japanese business people use to organise memos or reports is called the A3 method, named after the size of paper that the memo is designed to fit into. This effective method has been widely popularised by Toyota in recent years and adopted in many Japanese companies. It is a way of mapping information into a kind of hyper-concise visual flowchart. Essentially, the A3 method is a sequence of boxes in which the author establishes the context and importance of an issue, describes a problematic situation, identifies the desired outcome, analyses the situation to determine the cause of the problem, proposes countermeasures, offers an action plan for putting them into practice, and maps the follow-up process. For many people, when a problem is simplified and captured in this format, it becomes easier to manage and solve. Each phase flows into the next one, and with this approach, a messy problem can quickly be transformed into an immediate action plan. In business, as in art, brevity is greatly valued, and structuring information in a visual way is an organic part of Japanese culture. Concise visual aids will greatly appeal to your Japanese colleagues and customers. They will find them familiar and easy to follow. Once your presentation materials are prepared, you are ready for the big meeting or presentation for Japanese colleagues and customers. How do you achieve the best possible results? First, before the meeting, prepare an agenda. Your Japanese counterparts will want to know the detailed plan for the meeting and how long it will take. Second, send your Japanese counterparts the information you'll be presenting in advance. You can give it to them in digital or hard copy form. The main thing is for them to be able to review it in advance so that they know what you'll be talking about. For a group of non-Japanese people, you might want to keep your hard work and hard-won data as a surprise for the day of the presentation. But Japanese people hate surprises, good or bad, and getting a thorough idea of the contents of your presentation before the meeting is what will make them feel the most comfortable. Write down what you say before, during, and after you say it. During your presentation itself, use a flip chart or whiteboard liberally to illustrate or reinforce the points you want to make. And after the meeting, write up a memo summarising any decisions that were made to confirm and clarify everyone's understanding of the situation and the next steps to be taken. When you're presenting your material, above all, be clear. Remember that you're speaking to non-native English speakers. They may be fluent, but you don't want to use slang or vocabulary words they won't understand. Pronounce your words clearly and speak slowly without being condescending, and allow plenty of time for responses to questions. Humour may be misinterpreted, especially sarcasm, so it is best avoided in this type of situation. Don't ask your listeners if they understand. Instead, if they look confused, restate what you just said in a slightly different way. Avoid rambling, thinking out loud, or tossing ideas around. Your presentation should be polished and well thought out in advance, or you will confuse your listeners as they try to follow the thread of what you're saying. No matter how clear you've been during your meeting with colleagues, it is still extremely important to summarise and confirm what has been communicated among you. For that purpose, it's important to take notes so you can remember what has been said. Then, if there is anything that's not clear to you, you can offer your colleagues what you have heard them say, or your interpretation of their point of view, and give them a chance to confirm it. This approach is far preferable to asking them to repeat their opinions or thoughts. Tell them what you think they said, then let them correct you if you've misunderstood. Ideally, you should confirm at the end of the meeting itself, and then again afterwards with a written memo. Depending on your role in the group, when you close the meeting, you or a member of your team will want to give a wrap-up statement to summarise or review what has been decided. List next steps, assign tasks to specific participants, and set the date of the next meeting. It is extremely important to express your sincere appreciation to participants and end on a positive closing note. All of these suggestions accomplish one important thing. They remove or dramatically diminish the possibility of any surprises for your Japanese colleagues or customers. By telling them what you're going to tell them, telling it to them with visual aids, and then recapping the key meeting points with them to confirm, you're making sure that you're all on the same page and no serious misunderstandings have occurred. Between the language barrier and differences in communication style, there is a lot of room for misunderstanding between you and your Japanese colleagues and customers, and the approach outlined here will make sure you convey your point of view clearly and accurately to your colleagues. Good luck.